I'm going to speak briefly on the shallowest criticism I hear of Borderlands 3. That it's dated, that it plays too much like Borderlands. Odd, seeing as Gears 5 is being touted as spectacular, and is exactly like Gears 4 and the other Gears before it. I'm not against it being spectacular, fine with that. I'm a big fan of Gears. This is what any sequel does, is what I'm mind-boggled by. It improves and expands upon the foundation of the base game. Was Halo 2 not Halo 1, just with more features and a new story? Criticize it if it went and made that foundation muddy and ruined or worse, but that's not what Borderlands does with Borderlands 3. And I can't understand criticizing that a Borderlands game plays like Borderlands, albeit the most refined and honed Borderlands yet from a design standpoint. Scaling is more in line with Borderlands 1 and pre-sequel. The elements and their chemistry more meaningful and consequential. The Vault Hunters, after Gearbox has made characters for 10 years and arguably had done their best Vault Hunter work in pre-sequel, are the deepest yet, appear to provide a diverse set of powerful builds and the combination of artifacts, anointed loot, and class mods 2.0, their ability to add new skills to the mix or add to capstones and provide skills not spec'd into, means we have the most complex action RPG in the franchise's history. Gearbox evolved and tried new things in a game called Battleborn, and that game was excellent. But it got a bad rap, became an internet meme, and so I'm not going to hear from the same critics that killed off Battleborn that Borderlands is stale. It's not dated, it's formulaic, in the same sense that Oblivion and Morrowind are still Elder Scrolls, or that Fallout 4 is still Fallout. Further, it's formulaic to a formula that produced the universally praised Borderlands 2. Yes, Borderlands 3 is more Borderlands. It's a stupid premise for criticism. I'm not going to get into some of the social justice stuff that's followed this game, Mr. Pitchford, or the Epic Games Store. I'll only say no matter how you play this game, even if you buy it on Steam, you're still supporting Epic, as Borderlands is made on the Unreal Engine. I don't understand the criticism on this topic either, but I suppose the internet zeitgeist has decided that Epic is the enemy of the people, and so it's the enemy of the people. I've only ever heard one sensible argument against them, which involves security. I understood that, so be it. Here's what I can speak on then, from me, outside of the general internet noise. What I remember is being a kid and having Halo. Being one of those kids, similar to many of you, that got the game for their birthday or for Christmas, and that was it. That was it. Those were your 2 games a year if you were lucky. No Xbox Live, hell, no internet. If it wasn't for the ability to system link, to split screen, to engage in fully realized game worlds, and video games would have been a dull hobby and pursuit. I would have never got into them. If I had, say, Destiny when I was growing up, what am I going to do with that game? Thankfully, I had Halo and Morrowind on the original Xbox, an era where there wasn't the constant and uneasy relationship we've brokered with the always online microtransactions mandatory DLC world. I thought about my nephew. This generation coming up, what game for those kids without Xbox Live or an internet connection exists for them? Now they have Borderlands 3. Because I can see how the endless hours of fun came out of Halo, playing through on heroic and then legendary or whatever difficulty came to mind, playing in late night pizza-laden sessions with my buddies. Endless LAN parties playing multiplayer. And then just being on your own, experimenting to see how the AI Marines would fare, blowing up warhogs on the beachhead, see them reach the stratosphere, the endless adventure and immersive fun that was Morrowind. These were games that didn't have hoops to jump through, required anything special, asked me to spend any more money. I could just turn the system on and enjoy this hobby that we know as being a gamer. Fact is, in 20 years, if you opted in for a physical disc, Borderlands 3 will be one of the few games you can throw into your Xbox One or PS4 and actually play just by hooking it up to the TV like you could your N64 titles or SNES titles. The way it ought to always be. I don't have to buy DLC for Windows 10. I don't have to rebuy or upgrade Be Online or by random chance upgrade loot boxes for the vast majority of my computer software. Yet they retain the interactive, iterative design and prototyping that is the only good side to the live service model. They do it without the nefarious and annual bloodletting. 20 years I can throw Borderlands 3 into my Xbox One and show my grandkids this fantastic game. And outside of some FPS drop, sure, a slow menu, yeah, a bug or two, sure, definitely, they would have a game that would keep them like Morrowind kept me all those years ago. Borderlands 3 3 simply offers hundreds upon hundreds of hours of gameplay that, as Gearbox has done outside of one instance, offered as much value to the consumer as possible. Destiny will not be one of these games. Destiny cannot be thrown into your console for nostalgia. Thought free, worry free. How vanilla Destiny is still sold in GameStop without any DLC is beyond me. You can go to GameStop for $2.99 and buy the Xbox 360 vanilla Destiny and tell me, I don't have to explain to you in depth just what kind of content you're going to get there, but it won't be much, if any. You will have to be connected to the internet first and foremost, and if you are, then you're going to install files for 2 to 3 hours, and then you're going to realize that all you're going to do is go through a dull campaign that can be summarized with, I don't have time to explain why I don't have time to explain, and you've awoken the hive, and bullet sponge some enemies. Who's left? That's the problem with live service games. What games are left that you won't have to go through the same process after the floodgates were opened? Live service games antiquate their content. They become legacy software full of legacy content. Vault of Glass was special. It was really pioneering. But here we are, 6, 7 years on, and you do it as a fond look back. That's it. You get with your buddies, but you've got to get all the pieces right. You got to call Joe, and you got to call Fred, and you got to call Tommy. Everyone's got to hook up to the internet. You got to install these game files. You got to make sure everything's perfect. And then you and Joe and Tommy, you can try to do it again just as a look back. Whereas you could put in your Super NES and put in Super Metroid, you're gonna experience a fantastic game, and you don't have to jump through any hoops. And life is just too short to have to go through all this crap just to play a game. Something that's supposed to be fun and entertaining, and something that's supposed to dissolve your stresses and worries and allow you to go into another world, a fantasy, outside of all your real world crap, and allow you to do things that we can't do in real life. For many people, video games are escapism, and like a drug dealer, you start to realize that your hobbies have come at quite the cost when they are delivered to you in this fashion. And you tell me, was that worth $100 a year to be able to call up Tom and Fred and broker out an hour and then realize, oh, it's too bad. You had to install files, and now Fred's daughter wants him to go throw the football around, and Tom's got to take a dump. My friend Wrecker's Iron plug in his Borderlands 1 on the 360, and he was ushered into a fully realized title and still enjoys it years on as if it were a new game. And you can't do this with Anthem. You can't do this with a great many games today, and it's not right. It's not right. So, this is the future we're voting with our wallets upon. This is the most important point I can make in this impressions video of Borderlands 3. That Borderlands 3 doesn't require the internet to play it. You can play offline. Borderlands 3 doesn't have microtransactions at launch, at the very least. And only cosmetics seem to be coming out, and they won't require a premium currency. Borderlands 3 is a fully realized title at launch, with AAA production value from celebrity voice actors to a myriad of features and in-game activities. It is what we used to vote with our wallets upon and spend money as the bare minimum we expected. You went to the GameStop way back when you bought Halo 3, and you knew Halo 3 was going to be a full game. You knew Gears 2 and Gears 3 were going to be a full game. You knew basically any title that you went and you bought day one in the AAA market was going to be complete. That was the minimum. And it was going to say, thank you for buying us. It wasn't going to say, now you owe us, like many of these titles try to do anymore, that I can't understand and I can't get behind. You can go and you can buy it for, it's violent, so let's say you're older teenager out in the boondocks, or those budget-strapped families that do only get the 1 or 2 games a year, and they don't have Xbox Live, or they don't have PlayStation Network, and they know that they got their kid a game that they can actually enjoy. I'll never forget with Destiny. I talk a lot about Destiny, but I had friends who, I live in a country area. I live in Appalachia. I've got a lot of people I know that don't have internet. You can't even reach them. They can't get up in their hills. And they bought Destiny. Oh, this game looks beautiful. I can't wait. They can't play it. They spent $60 on a game they can't play. That's not fair. It's not right. It makes the content exclusive in a space that's increasingly ranting and raving about inclusivity in every little thing, every facet. Inclusivity. Well, you're excluding the poor. You're excluding the country people. You're excluding even urban people that that don't have internet. And this isn't some political point. It's just about understanding that not every single person can afford to buy a subscription model, basically for your DLCs, or will have the access to these patches. Well, the majority, I would assume, yes, the majority these days probably have access to that patch cycle. But the point is, your game ought to come out like Borderlands 3 has come out. That ought to be what we expect as an ethical standard, that if a kid goes into GameStop and say buys the Xbox 360 version of Destiny, they understand that, let me rephrase it, they shouldn't have to understand that because they don't have internet, or say not even a fast internet, say they're in Australia. I know Australia's got a lot of like internet speed struggles. This might not be a game they really get to enjoy, and they would be better off spending their money otherwise. Then the problem becomes, well, what game are you going to get? Because there's so few of them now that you can actually do the whole offline thing with. And it goes further. I see a big Destiny player on Twitter, and he's complaining that Borderlands is too easy, that you become too powerful in Borderlands. There's so much wrong with the sentiment. The idea that in any action RPG, from Diablo all the way to Diablo 3, mind you, in any RPG, that you become powerful if you put a lot of time in, because they're so used to farming just to become adequate. This is Stockholm Syndrome in a nutshell. I mean, they're so used to the idea that in order to gain a little bit of loot, that they need to jump through 17,000 loops and hold and just go through an absolute hamster wheel of a process. That the idea that a game said, oh, players like to farm, so here we'll put the checkpoint system right outside the farm, is oh god. It's like they've been released from the cage. Destiny requires any and all farming to come at the expense of an unnecessary amount of a human being's time. Time is our most valuable commodity. It's all we have. It's how we measure our life. My grandmother is 85. Do you think she has time for a weekly lockout? Time for Destiny's redundant systems of late. In order to get X weapon, you have to fill Y meter to plug into Y Vault, which powers a graph into Weasel nanobots. Then you have it one charge into the Philo Dark Rag. And I don't have time to explain why I don't have time to explain, but you're 1/10 of the way towards the weapon. Of course, only after you've bought their Battle Pass, the Season Pass, latest expansion DLC. Borderlands is retro future. The most refined Borderlands experience to date. Checkpoints are outside of boss spawns. We can fast travel from anywhere on the map. The loot is everything right about the procedural magic in Borderlands 1 and 2 combined into a system where I have yet not to discover something new. Sanctuary is the cleanest hub the franchise has ever held. Its universe, while on my first playthrough I wasn't thrilled by the story, has become more and more complete and has been able to enter into respectable RPG stead. An interesting universe with interesting characters. Borderlands is the ultimate example of designing a game for the game's sake and not having patent-pending, gambling, simulation game design put in by behavioral psychologists and put through endless corporate surveys to see if it'll guarantee money or not. It's the first game I've played in a long time that chose not to water down its design and instead to think of any possible ways to improve the system. It's the first time I've played a game in too long a time that let game designers and game programmers and developers just do their job. As of my first 50 or so hours in Borderlands 3, my opinion at this time is that Borderlands 3 is the best Borderlands game to date. The style has been maintained and looks fantastic, while unlike past entries, namely the first Borderlands, ADS is not just a stylized idea anymore. This is a for real shooter. It has the tightest gunplay, movement, and shooting mechanics the franchise has ever seen. This sets the game apart like few do, because the art style is so unique and truly distinguished as that's a Borderlands game, and it will age well. When you now combine that art style with the best gunplay, like this is, you can really argue it might not be up to say Doom or Titanfall or Apex Legends standard quite. I'd say Halo 5, I feel like it's on par with Halo 5 shooting mechanics. But you combine those shooting mechanics, you got a Halo 5 level shooting mechanics with the biggest, most complex, most abundant in diversity of loot ever Borderlands, and it sets the game apart like few do. The art style has been merged with this Halo-esque shooter, and it's just that good now. It's a problem for Anthem that Borderlands is an excellent shooter, and I often just smile because being admittedly a big fan of the franchise, Borderlands 2 is my second favorite game ever. I have so many good memories on the first game. I really enjoyed the pre-sequel for what it was. Getting to play this tight of a version of Borderlands, so full of quality of life improvements and just clean design, really clean, refined design. It's almost surreal. I mean, for us Borderlands people, in many ways Borderlands 3 is a little bit like a dream come true, to be real with you.